Dr. Koustubh Sharma is the Assistant Director of Conservation Policy and Partnerships at the Snow Leopard Trust, as well as the International Coordinator of the Global Snow Leopard Ecosystems Protection Program in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. He is a scientist, ecologist, and GIS specialist who has been involved with the study and conservation of snow leopards and other endangered species, such as the four-horned antelope in India. Koustubh will be explaining the importance of not just the conservation of the endangered snow leopard, but the conservation of the ecosystems they inhabit as well. Welcome, everybody, to the Mastication of Education podcast. We have today with us Koustubh Sharma. Koustubh is the Assistant Director of Conservation Policy and Partnerships at the Snow Leopard Trust. Koustubh currently resides in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. So, Koustubh, we'll begin with this. How did you get involved specifically in the conservation of snow leopards as opposed to any other species?
Oh well, yeah. Hi everyone. I've been always fascinated by wildlife, but even their elusive, not easy to spot or observe species have tickled my imagination almost ever since I grew up. So I've been fascinated by species which are not so easy to observe, and when I was finishing my PhD, which was on another elusive species called the four-horned antelope, it so happened that the Snow Leopard Trust was looking for someone with a similar background and experience, and I applied. It took them a while to decide that I can do what they want me to do for them, but then it's been 15 years since.
And you originally started out as a scientist, correct?
I did my master's in physics, and then I did my PhD in wildlife zoology while studying the four-horned antelope. It's a forest-dwelling antelope found in parts of India and Nepal. So that's how I started. Yeah.
So that's interesting. I usually don't hear about people doing more physics and biology. Kind of chemistry, I don't. That's pretty cool. You have the mix of both sides of the sciences.
Yeah, as they say, physics tells you how anything is happening, allows you to ask questions, and end of the day, science is all about asking the right questions. So it surely helped. And then moving forward, what also did happen is because you're talking about species that you cannot observe very well, you need to use technology, right? And that's where whatever little background I had in physics and electronics, it helped me be comfortable with whether it's technology or statistics or mathematical modeling.
What are some technologies you might use snow leopard conservation?
So with snow leopards, the fascinating part is that they have evolved to live and thrive in these mountains, which are nearly impossible. They're actually possible, but they're nearly impossible for most people to hike up and down. By the time you hike up one ridge line, they'll be gone beyond three ridge lines. So what we desperately need is technology. And just to give you an example, we use camera traps. These are automatic cameras which trigger the moment there is a combination of heat and motion in front of them, and they take pictures. So they work like minions. They work like your minions who don't complain about any temperature or climatic issues, and they'll sit in the mountains for months at end taking picture of whatever moves in front of them. So they truly help as our minions in the mountains, recording movement and other activities of a lot of animal that passes in front of them. So that's one. When it comes to large species with large ranges, it's often impossible to track them on foot, and snow leopard is no exception. So what we do is we have a program ongoing in Mongolia, South Gobi, since 2008, where we've been putting collars, satellite collars on snow leopards. And once you put a satellite collar, it's like a snow leopard has a GPS and a sat phone of its own. Every 5 hours, the snow leopard will send you a text message, an encrypted text message, informing you where it is, what altitude is there, what's the temperature around, whether it's active, whether it's sleeping. And then the same data can be further curated to define whether the snow leopard's on a kill or it's resting, or in some cases, whether it's dead. So that's another example of how we use technology. I'll just give you one more example before shutting up. The third one is, of course, we use genetics, where each animal leaves their genetic signatures, if I may say so, their DNA in spores and in the hair that they rub when they rub their cheek against the walls. And this DNA can help us determine whether it's a snow leopard, whether a snow leopard is there or not. Not just that, it helps us determine whether it's a male or a female, and even also to the extent which individual it is. And with some new upcoming methods being developed at this point in time, we might soon be able to even get hold of a skin being traded illegally and say which part of the world that skin has come from. So yeah, these are just a couple of examples of how technology is being used for conservation, especially in snow leopards.
And just curious, how long would it take to get to the snow leopard if, God forbid, one of them passed away or was in trouble?
In this case, like in Mongolia, we managed to get there within a couple of days, even less than that, depending on how soon we get the signal. Usually, what happens is these animals sometimes even sleep, and they sleep so still that your callers can misunderstand the signals and say that it's dead, but in reality, they're just in long slumber, right? Long, deep slumber. So, which is why we give it enough time to ensure that it's not sleeping. But yeah, you can get to these animals in a couple of days' time.
Good. What part of the world, like what specific nations, do you find snow leopards primarily?
So snow leopards are they're found in 12 countries. You can start from the southeastern corner, which is in Bhutan, India, Nepal, Pakistan, Afghanistan. Then you come up to Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan. Then you go to Kazakhstan, Russia, Mongolia, and China. China has the most snow leopards in the world.
What's the a rough estimate of the overall world snow leopard population?
Yeah, so all estimates about snow leopard population are at best guesstimates at this point in time. Uh, Although we are on a very ambitious mission. There's an initiative called Population Assessment of the World's Snow Leopards, in short, PAWS, which is hoping to be able to provide much more reliable and replicable estimates by next year to a large extent. But as of now, our estimate is anywhere between 3.5 to 7,000 snow leopards in the world.
And what do you know, like what number is considered for a species to be endangered?
Oh, it depends. There are multiple factors that define a species as endangered or vulnerable, least concern, and so on under these IUCN categories. So I think I can look it up, but if I'm not mistaken, the number of adult individuals should be more than 2,000 or 2,500 for it to be not endangered. And snow leopards is, as per the last estimate by IUCN, they call it a vulnerable species, a species threatened by extinction, and yeah, in the vulnerable category.
So, how important are the snow leopards to their ecosystem, and what primary functions do they serve in that ecosystem?
So we often call the snow leopard as the thermometer of the mountains of Central and South Asia. They're the thermometer of the health of the ecosystem because being an apex predator, their presence almost testifies the presence of rich biodiversity that they depend upon. And because they range across massive areas, which often cut across multiple international borders as well. We also call them as the ambassadors of the mountain range in this region. So yeah, basically their presence is a testimony to the habitat being in good shape, right? And we need this habitat to be in good shape because it provides a multitude of services, what we call as ecosystem services to people, be it water, be it fodder for livestock, be it food to the people living here, to uh, climate sequestration services, and so on.
So this kind of sounds similar to, have you ever heard of the wolves of Yellowstone?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely right. You're absolutely right. They have the same story here.
Yeah, I always found that interesting. I never really read up on it. I saw like a brief documentary on it, and it was fascinating because the wolves were very rare at that point in Yellowstone. But then when they were able to repopulate, the ecosystem started to rebound because they were the other invasive species could no longer exist with them.
Absolutely. I think the role these top predators play in engineering the ecosystems is it can never be overemphasized, and we often ignore it. We often treat a lot of these charismatic species as standalone, saying that, oh, they're just a beautiful species to be saved, which is true indeed, but that's not enough. There's a lot more to it that these species serve as a purpose.
Are there any other similar species to the snow leopard that are apparently in the same situation?
In the same habitat, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, so there are a lot of ungulate species like the Urial, for example. It's a beautiful ungulate which is currently under a lot of stress because of habitat change and fragmentation. There is the Markhor, which is another gorgeous mountain goat whose numbers are already very low. So their populations are also vulnerable. There are certain subspecies of Argali, which is again a beautiful mountain sheep whose numbers are also restricted. So yeah, there are a lot of species which are n- not in great numbers, and the snow leopard overlaps with their distributions as well.
What are some of the primary factors that have caused the endangerment of the snow?
Yeah, so broadly speaking, if I can put it in one word, it's humans who are responsible for the endangerment of a snow leopard. To be specific, there are various threats that species face, especially the snow leopard faces, and these threats vary across space as well. Not just space, but even time. So while a threat will be high today in a certain area, in a few years' time, another threat could have taken over just because maybe some conservation organization has taken care of that particular threat, and so on. But generically speaking, uh, retaliatory killing by herders who lose their livestock to snow leopards is one of the main threats. Illegal wildlife trade for trophies and skin and other parts of its body is a key threat. Off late, poorly planned infrastructure and um, mining and building dams in areas without careful planning has become a big threat in many parts of the snow leopard range. And then in some parts, overhunting of its prey continues to be a key threat. So if there's not enough food for the snow leopard, the number will remain suppressed. Uh, and the reason in many places they don't have enough food, which is their prey, is because the prey is getting overhunted or poached or just taken out as trophies or for food or for entertainment.
What's some of the primary prey for the snow leopards?
So primarily snow leopards are, their diet includes ibex, which is a mountain goat with spectacular horns. Then they also, in certain parts, they depend on a species called the blue sheep. Then there are other species such as the markhor, the argali, and even smaller animals like the marmots and sometimes even birds. They make part of their diet.
Back to what you were talking about with the poaching and trophy. Your experience, how hard is or how hard or how easy is it to track those that are involved in that? Because I would imagine it's usually not like a one-off instance for people doing it. I figured it would be well funded and well organized, so there might be, the same repeat, organizers that are involved in this.
So I'm sorry if I understand your question correctly. You're saying how easy or difficult it is to go and hunt a snow leopard?
Oh no, I'm sorry. To track those who are illegally hunting the.
Oh, right. Yes. So you're right. I mean, it's it's not going to be easy. It's almost like looking for a needle in a haystack, and it what makes it particularly difficult is that snow leopards move across these massive mountains and ridge lines and canyons, and it's not easy to to be able to patrol these, which is why a lot of effort to reduce illegal trade and poaching in snow leopards depends on working towards the demand side. How can we reduce, how can we reduce the demand to begin with by better education and strict measures taken by governments for whoever possesses or purchases or is involved in any sort of trade. So that's one. The other one is also a lot of times, in fact, most of the times, cases go undetected. So we really are emphasizing on building a database of incidences wherever snow leopards have been found being traded or illegally trafficked. And the hope is with a good database, one should be able to start predicting patterns and trends. And once you have a better understanding of patterns and trends, you can directly go and address those issues. But one has to really look at the entire spectrum from where the animals are being poached. I think in those areas, if we are able to work with the local communities, that they start seeing a value in snow leopards being in their vicinity. In other words, if people see more value in a live snow leopard living around them than a dead snow leopard, that's one side of it. The other side of it is if we are able to work through through better awareness and education on ensuring people don't buy any products that come from dead snow leopards. So I think one has to really work at the entire across the entire spectrum. But yeah, so that's how it's almost like looking for a needle in a haystack.
Right, I imagine too, and because it's such a difficult terrain in the mountainous regions, to just trying to get around there is, I imagine, quite a challenge.
Absolutely, they spread across 2 million square kilometers approximately. So that and even there, they live in some of the most difficult to access mountains. So yes, it's never going to be easy.
And what are some of the products used from snow leopard? Primarily like fur coats, or
Yes, typically what we see is is snow leopard skins used as decoration pieces or as fur coats or hats. So these are the primary uses of snow leopard skins. Of late, we have also seen a few skins which were taxidermied in a very specialized way, which probably were going to certain markets where they would be converted into stuffed, stuffed trophies or even stuffed toys for that matter.
How were you first introduced to the Snow Leopard Trust?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Sorry.
How were you first introduced to the Snow Leopard Trust?
So, the Snow Leopard Trust was established in 1981. If you're interested in snow leopards, you're bound to hear about the Snow Leopard Trust. And that's how it happened with me as well. While I was just finishing my PhD, I was looking for, some of these charismatic species, and tiger, the snow leopard, the common leopard. These are some of those charismatic species that you do get to learn a lot about, or you would like to learn about. And that's how I got to know about the Snow Leopard Trust and the work that it's doing. It intrigued me that the trust's focus is on research-based community, research-driven community-based conservation, and that's spectacular. If you can work with the local communities, get them on your side, then you have a very strong, very strong line of defense for these species.
What are the primary sources of funding for the Snow Leopard Trust or conservation efforts?
So the Snow Leopard Trust has a diverse range of donors and funding partners. We do receive a lot of private funding. For example, people who just love the cat, who just care for the snow leopard, they would give donations. So there's a lot of resources that come through donations. In addition to that, what we do is we are regularly writing proposals for grants to UN-based or other foundations. So there's a lot of fundraising that happens through grant writing and project proposals for very specific issues that we are looking at. And in some parts, we also collaborate closely with UN organizations, whether it's the United Nations Environment Program or the United Nations Development Program. And there we also work through some UN-based funding, if we may say so.
How would you say the reception's been among government and non-governmental organizations regarding snow leopard conservation?
Yeah, so in 2014, when the Kyrgyz government convened a meeting of environment ministers from all the 12 snow leopard range countries to develop and endorse what we call as the Bishkek Declaration for Snow Leopard Conservation. It was like a watershed moment where we realized that the snow leopard does have it does attract people's attention. It does mean something to the governments as well. So I think what really has happened over time is we've realized that, in fact, we've been able to communicate, and countries and NGOs and governments have realized that snow leopard conservation is not just about conserving this one species. It's about conserving an entire ecosystem, the whole biodiversity, which is found in the area where snow leopards are. Beyond that, snow leopards also have a special place in cultures and religions. So they also are revered by almost every community which overlaps with their distribution. So in short, snow leopard conservation is conserving the entire ecosystem and also engaging with the local communities and those people who share their spaces with wildlife in these remote areas.
You piqued my interest when you said the snow leopards have a certain place in religious rites in certain regions. Of like any specific examples?
Pick up any folklore from this region. Look at petroglyphs from these regions. Um, Go to any memoirs of people traveling, even hundreds of years ago. You will find the mention of the snow leopard as a revered cat, as as a cat which is, let's say, invisible yet there, as a cat which is almost the guardian of these mountains. So yeah, so it's fascinating how the snow leopards, despite being so elusive and so difficult to see, captured the interest of everyone who's been living in these mountains. And there's a fascinating PhD. If you are interested, I'll be happy to share. I'll be happy to connect you to the student who worked on that, where she explored the importance of religion and culture in snow leopard conservation, and it's intriguing to see how closely knit these values are to our ability to conserve a species.
Yeah, I find it fascinating the role the basically any feline plays in their certain region of the
Yeah,
world. The jaguar in South America, the, the Middle East.
yeah,
It's always like a protector, a guardian of
absolutely,
creatures.
absolutely.
Always found it fascinating.
Yeah.
What's a normal day like for you as the assistant director of conservation partnerships at the Snow Leopard Trust?
One of the best parts of working with snow leopards is no 2 days are the same. So that's very exciting. Um, yeah, so typically a lot of my work would earlier be spending time in the field, working with local researchers or conservationists, trying to help them with their specific goals in research or conservation. But yep, over time, my role has grown into helping coordinate more broadly. And at this point in time, what I also do is I spend a considerable time of mine in coordinating the Global Snow Leopard and Ecosystem Protection Program, which is this international platform that brings together governments and international organizations of working on snow leopards. So, so I work a lot with policymakers, with thematic subject experts into developing guidelines, policies, and research work. And as part of my responsibilities with the Snow Leopard Trust, which are sort of this more or less the same, I spend a lot of time working in building new partnerships, uh, helping with study designs and analysis, and also transforming research into uh, transforming research into communication or tools that can make the world understand the challenges the snow leopards face in an easy way.
With that said, is there like a certain goal or outcome that for with the Snow Leopard Trust and conservation efforts? Like, for example, is there
Mhm.
a certain replenishment number of the snow leopard population? That's a certain goal.
Yeah. So our a broader goal is the snow leopard population should grow so that it is no longer endangered, right? So that's number one. But if not that, then at least the snow leopard population should not decimate further. So that's, if you may put it simply, is our goal, that we want the snow leopard numbers to eventually come out of being endangered, but in a way that it does not negatively affect people who share their spaces with snow leopards. Uh, and wherever it wherever there are negative interactions between the snow leopards and people, we work with the local people to minimize and mitigate those negative interactions in a way that there's a positive value in being in an area that's also being used by a snow leopard.
Do you think it's an advantage to have such a big area for the snow leopards to have maybe an easier time to repopulate as opposed to a smaller confined area?
I'll say yes and no. Yes, because obviously, it allows them, it gives them greater space. No, because if you look at it very carefully, while it looks massive, technically speaking, they're found above the tree line, which varies in different countries and different across different latitudes. The tree line varies, right? It's at 800 meters in some countries. It's at 2,500 meters above sea level in another country, and then they have to be below the altitude which is permanently frozen. So literally, snow leopards use a narrow band of altitude between the tree line and the permanently frozen altitudes. What it does is it makes it makes the species far more conducive to negative interactions with people or conflict with people if these altitudes, these temperature ranges change, which is what's likely, which is what's already being seen with climate change. So on one hand, yes, they have large areas, but on the other hand, it's not really a very large area. They really have a very narrow band to look at.
Do you see any diversity between the snow leopard populations in the different countries that they habitate?
So there is a paper that came out a couple of years ago, which suggested that there could be up to 3 subspecies of snow leopards. But then there are more works in the process at this point in time where they're trying to further evaluate and further understand it. But as of now, the entire species is, we don't really. I mean, yes, there are the 3 subspecies which have been suggested by this paper, but there's very little morphological difference between the 3. So they all look more or less the same.
Okay. Yeah, and it's in Florida. We have what's called the Florida Keys, which are the island chain. You ever heard of the
Yes.
Keys?
Yep.
Yeah, I come across them whenever I'm working down there, but they're so isolated. They've actually
And
had small population and haven't been
yeah.
able. So a lot of much shorter, and there's not a whole lot of them left. But I was thinking, with the contrast to the snow leopards, at least when you're saying they have, even though the difference 3 subspecies sex, at least there seems like enough of a genetic pool for them to proliferate over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Also, what's really important is for populations to continue to remain connected. And if you look at the snow leopard distribution from Bhutan all the way till Mongolia and China, it is sort of connected. There is reasonable connectivity across, unless, of course, some of these big dams or big roads completely fragment these habitats, or fences come across certain areas that make it impossible for animals to cross over. But as long as that's not happening, these snow leopards are known to travel several hundred kilometers to disperse, and it has ensured that their population remains fairly diverse.
Do you know about how fast they run? I'm just curious. I know cheetahs.
Now, I wouldn't know. I can't tell exactly how fast they run because most of the times they're climbing up or climbing down, right? Even when hunting. Yes, there are videos that you can see where you can see them sprinting. I won't really remember how fast they run, but they have this uncanny ability to climb very, very fast, faster than, yeah. I've seen any. I don't think anybody else has been. No, I know anybody who can climb that fast on these really high mountains and steep mountains.
The United States, I think only the mountain lion would be the closest species after the leopard as far as person mountains and rugged terrain.
Absolutely. There's in fact a very nice publication which compares the ranging patterns between the snow leopards and the mountain lions. So you should look it up. It's a very interesting little comparison between the two species.
As far as people getting into the science of, whether it's snow leopard or other endangered species, how competitive is it in the field to get into a certain organization, government, or just any the science world?
Yeah. So if I may put it simply, the opportunities are far and few and far between. So that's one, but there's always there's always need for someone who's good enough in what she or he does. There have been many times people are looking for someone with a certain skill set, and they keep looking for years, right? But on the other hand, there's also not too many opportunities that come out. But yes, I think snow leopards, or in fact all wildlife, we need all hands on deck. So the more the people are able to contribute, and the best part is for to work for a species conservation, you don't need to be a biologist. You can be a computer engineer and develop some very valuable tools, technological solutions for a species conservation. You can be a social scientist, you can be an economist, so that you can develop economic models which make it viable. In fact, viable for people to see why a species should be conserved. So I don't think what background you come from restricts or limits your being able to work with species conservation and research. I think everyone can bring in their own specialized skills, which can be applied in the field.
What advice would you give to any young up and comers looking to get into the conservation field, regardless of what their expertise is?
Start reaching out to people who are already working, people and organizations who are already working in certain sectors. If you can find an opportunity to intern with them, please do, because many times when you intern, you realize whether it is meant for you or not. And if it is meant for you, then you can use that internship to move forward. So I'll really strongly recommend that if this is of interest, start engaging, and then get your feet in the water and see whether this is what you're interested in, or this is something you'll be happy to continue doing. And if so, then this is all yours.
Have you found that a lot of people like to stay on board with the efforts?
Quite a few. You'll be surprised how many people who are currently working with us started as interns or volunteers or students, and have graduated into working full time as program directors, as lead researchers, and conservationists with us.
I think that's good because people that are into that definitely seem to have a passion for it. Like the last few years in the mortgage field industry, and we literally have the turnover rate of the fast food industry. So it's not you're more or less we're in it for a paycheck as opposed to the passion.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I mean, it's really important for you to have a bit of passion for sure. I mean, imagine living in a remote mountain for 3 months at a stretch where you don't have any internet. All you have is a once or twice a day sat phone email, which is a few lines at a time. So yes, you need to have that little madness, but it's totally worth it, because what you find when you are out in the wilderness is something that nobody else has ever found. And that's what makes it special. And every little effort, every day spent, every hour spent on any of these research or conservation activities, it ultimately helps the snow leopards. It ultimately helps the wildlife. It helps us at the end of the day.
What was your most memorable experience in the field?
There've been a few, starting from my PhD days when I came face to face with a tiger on foot. But I think nothing comes even close to the experience of coming face to face with a snow leopard. And I was truly 2 meters away from the snow leopard, or in feet, it's like 5 feet or something, 5 or 6 feet. And yeah, I mean, I was just standing on a ledge, and suddenly I hear a whiff, and there is a snow leopard which just climbs up the ledge and realizes that there's a human standing there. Looked at me with these big eyes, as if saying, "How did you get so close to me?" And then turned around and just flared away like a ribbon. So I still remember each scar on its face. It was a big male, and yeah, that experience, it never fades.
How were you feeling when you first came face to face? Were you nervous or stunned or excited?
Oh, I can't tell you how excited I was. And the reason being that, snow leopards are known to never proactively attack humans. They, there have been there's never been an instance where snow leopards have proactively attacked humans unless they are cornered in a small space. In that case, even a mouse will attack, right? So yeah, I was just super excited that finally a snow leopard, that too so close. And I had a camera, but I didn't have the will to even lose my attention
Right.
for even a second. I just wanted to see it, and I just saw it. And if someone asks me, I can draw each scar on its face, each spot on its face. It's so well etched in my memory.
One of those you have to see first in the moment. There's no time to bring out the third eye.
Absolutely. Not interested. Not interested. This is just between me and the cat. That I think that's how it'll be.
Yeah, I think that's brave people like you that are willing to get that close to the wildlife. Like for me personally, I'm willing to deal with any types of humans in any environment. But even though I'm not like wildlife, I always have that barrier of like I don't want to cross its boundary. Get the wrong idea. Think I'm on its turf, trying to take something from it.
So I second you on that. I think often uh, people may perceive that it's okay to get too close to wildlife just because you're passionate about it. But if I may put it this way, I've never had a dangerous encounter with wildlife. It's always been safe, and it's only because I fear uh, I fear animals which are out there, and I I try to respect their space. Right now, uh, this incident was out of chance. It just walked right in front of me, and then of course, fortunately, there was it wasn't scared enough to have a swipe at me. That's stay away. But otherwise, yes, it's very important to give animals their space. Even the smallest animals, the smallest antelopes, can cause massive damage to you if you intrude their private little space, right? And can injure pretty badly. So I think it's passion is important, yes, but also respect and maintaining that little distance is equally important.
It's funny because I think we lose sight of that as humans being the dominant species at us on the planet for the most part, very removed from nature, and then we almost kind of forget that when we're in, the wildlife habitat. On one, these animals are much stronger than us. They have a much higher pain tolerance than us. It's like a very humbling experience when you're out there alone.
Indeed, indeed. Which is why, I mean, I can never overemphasize that. Give them the respect that they deserve, and trying to intrude in their space, trying to get too close can always be dangerous, and it's dangerous with any animal. Even as I said, even a mouse can come and bite you pretty bad or charge at you, right? If you've cornered it in a bad spot.
Yeah, I like to play with my white cat. I showed you the picture of, and he loves to box. And sometimes he got me pretty good, the other
Oh,
day.
there we go.
Playing, I always think to myself, like, what happens if he actually snaps one day? Like, cats can do
Yep.
a lot of damage.
Of course. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But in the same breath, what we also know is that animals also fear humans, right? They have a huge fear for humans, for whatever we're known for, and that allows it allows them the opportunity, or it ensures that they stay away from us most of the times. They try to uh, you know avoid us on most occasions, and it's only when they're like in what's that called, fight or flight. When they can't get a flight, they end up with a fight. So I think that's where it's important to give them this space. But then I mean, cats and dogs and our pets, they also treat us as peers, right?
Yeah, it's funny because I always think that with animals they look at us at one point like we're almost just so alien to the rest of the animal kingdom. But on the other hand, I wonder if there's almost like these genetic imprints that they have, humans have done to them over history, and I wonder whether it's more of one or the other.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it could be. I think there's this learned behavior, and then there is behavior that you're born with, as they say, as you said, genetic. So yeah, it's a mix of both, and they're both very important for an individual to survive, right? If, for instance, there is a certain individual of a certain species which decides to, okay, I'll start attacking humans, it's bound to be eliminated from that population pretty soon. So only those individuals do survive which do not attack humans. So which is in a way, uh, you know, sort of forced evolution of a certain behavioral trait.
Koustubh, as we conclude, is there anything you'd like to add, or any references or links where anyone can look you up?
Right. So you please do follow us on social media. The Snow Leopard Trust is at Snow Leopards on Twitter, and at Snow Leopard Trust on Instagram and Facebook. We do have a website which is very simple, www.snowleopard.org. That's how simple it can get. Uh, there are lots of interesting communications updates that we do share with our partners. So please do sign up to our newsletter if you would like to receive some interesting information about science, about conservation work, about policy, and so on. So please do that. And if you're interested to follow what I do on Twitter, it's Koustubh_Sharma. And yep, that's about it.
Koustubh, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's nice and early on a Saturday where you are in Bishkek.
Thank you so much for inviting me to this. Thank you. Such a pleasure talking to you. And yeah, keep doing the good work.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye bye.